Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'd, habati fillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As'al Allah kareem Rabbil arshil azim an yatawallana fi dunya wal akhirah. Habati fillah, the concept of dhikr, of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which of course we want to do as much as possible during this holy month of Ramadan. A dhikr is of two types. A dhikr is of two types. And there is the general meaning of dhikr, al-ma'na, al-dhikr al-'am. Al-dhikr al-'am. Meaning the general type of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the general type of dhikr, which all of us do in some form or another. And this is for kullu متعبد لله ذاكر لله فمجالس الحلال والحرام ذكر وصدقة وزكاة وصلاة ذكر لله تعالى. So the general meaning, the general type of dhikr, of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is every way in which you worship Allah, because you're remembering Allah. Your qasd, your intention is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that means any sitting which deals with the halal and the haram. So the majalis al-ilm, the majalis al-talab al-ilm, this is a type of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bel, even this cyber sitting, if you will, is a type of dhikr. This is something you'll be rewarded for if you're listening with the intent to better yourself and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as long as I'm speaking, the mutakallim, to share the knowledge of Islam for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that is the dhikr, dhikrillah azza wa jal. That's the general meaning of dhikr. Also, there it is dhikr if you pay sadaqah for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, our brothers and sisters in Palestine are suffering tremendously. Our brothers and sisters in Yemen are suffering tremendously. Our brothers and sisters in many places in Africa are suffering tremendously. And if you're able to spend in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant them even a little bit of relief of a date to break their fast, then this is also dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're doing it for the pleasure of Allah azza wa jal. And this is a type of remembrance, the general, it's in the general sense, because it involves remembering Allah and doing good deeds. Also, zakat, paying your zakat if you are a person who must fulfill that responsibility. Also, salat is a type of dhikr or remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fact that you pray 5 times a day, this is also the general meaning of dhikr and falls under the general dhikr or remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And from those a'imma, beginning with the Salaf, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een, are who said that, and this meaning, who supported this meaning of the general type of dhikr, comes from the Salaf, such as Sa'id ibn Jubair, rahmatullahi alayhi, rahmatin wasi'ah, wa Ata ibn Abi Rabah. So these are tabi'een, rahmatullahi alayhi. And Imam an-Nawawi also mentioned something similar to this in the beginning of his book Al-Adhkar. And likewise, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah mentioned in his book, in his Majmu' al-Fatawa, wa Ibn al-Qayyim wa Jama'a min Ahl al-Ilm. So a group from the scholars also mentioned this, that this is the general type of dhikr. This is just sitting in a gathering, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the halal and the haram, talking about fiqh, talking about aqidah, talking about different mu'amalat, different ways of interaction in the sharia. This is the general type of dhikr. The specific type of dhikr, which we definitely need to be most concerned with during the holy month of Ramadan, but all of it is inclusive. All of it is inclusive and good, and it's all from good deeds, and you'll be rewarded for all of it because it's all a part of dhikr. Is the dhikr al-khas, the specific type of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وهو تسبيح وتهليل وتكبير إلى غير ذلك من الأذكار المعروفة وهو مراد في هذا. So this specific dhikr, which is usually what we refer to when we're thinking of dhikr and remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, we failed to mention reciting the Quran. That's one of the greatest types of dhikr and remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal. But more specifically, when we usually talk about adhkar and dhikr, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're talking about things like saying Subhanallah, tasbih, wa alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, or Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, and also takbir, Allahu Akbar. Okay, so or la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. These are all various ways of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the tongue, and they fall under the specific dhikr. That is usually what is specifically mentioned as dhikr. So dhikr sometimes is in general, which is general obedience to Allah and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by spending in the cause of Allah, by paying your zakat, by praying salat, all of these things, and also in any acts of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it involves remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the act itself. You're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your intention is to please Allah Azza wa Jal. And then there's a specific dhikr, as we mentioned, and that's, making the adhkar that are mentioned. For example, an excellent book is Husnul Muslim, that is full of adhkar, ways of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil, protect us from kulli su' wa makruh, bless us to be of the dhakireen wa dhakirat kathira, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.